What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome to the MKO Pugilism Boxing channel where we talk all things boxing. Remember to like and subscribe, hit the bell notification, put it on all so you get notified immediately as soon as new content drops on the channel. So without further ado, let's get into it. Another upset. And just yesterday we had the big fight for nearly all the marbles, Unified Lightweight Championship of the World, WBO, WBA, IBF and WBC Franchise Championships of the World, all on the line. Teofimo Lopez, he was at home, he was in New York, Hulu Theatre and that, over there in New York. He was the favoured fighter going into it. I had sort of predicted a late stoppage, late KO for Teofimo Lopez. I thought he'd have too much power, too much strength, and I just felt going into it with his victories over Richard Comey, his victory over Vasyl Lomachenko, I just thought he should have that bit too much for Kambosos, and he should just be a little bit too classy and too skillful for Kambosos. I thought he was on a different level, but there were certain people, I think Chris Andre pointed out certain points about the counterpunching abilities of George Kambosos Jr. And ultimately that was what won Kambosos Jr. the fight. First bell rings, my man Lopez comes steaming out the blocks. He came looking for the KO in the first round, and in boxing they always say, look, you don't look for the KO. Don't go looking for the knockout, because when you go looking for the knockout, it doesn't come. And that was exactly what happened there. Teofimo Lopez couldn't wait, got stuck into Kambosos, throwing these overhand shots, overhand rights, and really looking to put it on Kambosos. Kambosos was a little bit flustered, but for the most part, Kambosos was very composed. He held his own in this fight. You know, he was just sort of, you could tell he was just sort of looking to counter Lopez. And overall, the first round was going sort of as expected, with Lopez sort of going after that knockout as he promised. He was promising everybody, I'm gonna knock this guy out in the first round. He's not gonna last, blah blah blah. And he really went for it. He really seemed like he wanted to go for his prediction. But the opposite ended up happening almost in that first round, because he got caught with a beautiful right hand counter, and it was one of those shots that was just such a sort of natural counter shot by Kambosos, because Kambosos was really slick, and he was doing a good job of making Lopez miss, doing a very good job of doing that. And he just sort of made him miss, made him commit, and then bang, lands that beautiful right hand and puts Lopez down. And that was a big major thing in the fight, because that was one of the things that I personally didn't think Kambosos would be able to do. I'd seen Lopez's chin been tested before and all this, so I felt that Kambosos is the non-puncher. You know, he's not going to be able to put Lopez down. He might be able to outbox him, but he's not going to put him down. He's not going to take him out or anything like that, because he doesn't have the pop. He doesn't have the punching power. But he proved everybody wrong there, and he proved that with the right technique and the right timing, you can take someone down, much like what Fury, how he turned it around with Deontay Wilder. He wasn't a puncher going in, but with the right timing, the right placement, and when it's a counter punch, very good. And that's what Kambosos done. Brilliant knockdown in the first round, and of course to me that was a 10-8 round. And the pattern of the fight was pretty straightforward. I mean, Lopez did have a bit of success, but for the most part the governor in this fight was George Kambosos Jr., because George Kambosos was he was good on the jab, and for me, to sort of summarize it, it was counter-punching and patience that won George Kambosos this fight, because he was really patient with Lopez. He didn't rush anything. All he was doing is just sitting back, waiting for Lopez to commit himself to try and throw shots. And now, as soon as Lopez commits himself, bang, it's that left hook. That left hook of Kambosos was a brilliant shot, really, really good shot. And he was landing that shot repeatedly. I mean, he was very clever and very crafty, was Kambosos. He really did, throughout this entire bout, just completely outbox Teofimo Lopez, which I didn't really see happening. But the fact was that, Kambosos, he was just very patient. He was just waiting every round through the early rounds, just letting Lopez make the first move. And, Lopez wasn't throwing many shots. He was trying to do it sort of one at a time. It wasn't sort of working. It was working in terms of his movement and whatnot and trying to come forward, but he wasn't letting his hands go. And every time he did try and throw his single shots or 1-2s or whatever, do single or ones and twos, because that's what Lopez was throwing pretty much, just ones and twos. And every time he would try and throw these ones or twos, you'd have Kambosos landing his threes and fours, bam, bam, bam. So every time Lopez would try and come in, commit to a shot or two, it was bam, 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 or he'd have to take a left hook off of Kambosos. And Kambosos' shots, they were landing very cleanly, whereas Lopez's work at certain points in his fight was a little bit messy. Don't get me wrong, I think the fight was quite close overall. Lopez had his spots, but for the vast majority of the rounds, it was just a story of Kambosos just sort of outboxing him, just being patient, waiting for those mistakes, waiting for the commitment, and then bang, he's landing his left hook or right hand or whatnot, and he was even able to land the overhand right with a bit of frequency, because Lopez wasn't really working that hard in his fight. He wasn't really throwing hands as he needed to. I felt that his mistake was that he didn't really work hard enough. I feel like Lopez needed to sort of double the jab, come forward, commit to head movement. Don't just try and stand off and then wait for your man and then try and land one big shot, because most of what Teofimo Lopez was doing, Kambosos saw it coming because he was patient and he was just watching him, never took his eyes off him. And it was just an excellent display by Kambosos, just completely outboxed Lopez, and in many ways he outclassed him, because, contrary to the popular belief of, obviously Lopez is a very good fighter, but he was made to look pedestrian in there. He's made to look clumsy at a lot of times throughout this fight, because Kambosos was just so patient and so composed. And another thing that we saw in Kambosos was, even in those latter rounds, going from the middle rounds to the championship rounds, Kambosos' chin was fantastic, because he did have to take some good shots, good right hands, and he did have to take some powerful shots from Lopez, but he always would go back to his boxing again and just get back on the bike. And even the 10th round, where Lopez did put him down and he did have a lot of success in that round, Kambosos was still, he still sort of fought fire with fire a little bit, and he got back on the bike, back on the boxing, and started scoring points again, started making my man Lopez miss again. So yeah, it's one of those fights where it was very impressive, I must say, by George Kambosos Jr. Really impressive display of boxing, and he ended up taking it by a split decision on points, which was, for me, definitely the right verdict. I felt he done more than enough to win, and I felt it was the case of Lopez not doing enough and just, I guess, relying on his confidence or whatever, to thinking he's winning the rounds when he's not. He naively thought that. But yeah, it was just, the story of this fight was just Kambosos, counter-punching, patience, and it was an amazing feat. And I must say that, let us mention again the fact that Kambosos was not only able to win this fight, but the fact he was able to go over to New York which is the hometown of Lopez, go over to New York, outbox the guy that's, meant to be a pound for pound boxer, and brilliant. It was a overall excellent performance. It's a historical thing for Australia, one of the greatest ever victories by an Australian boxer, and you've just got to take your hat off to George Kambosos Jr. It was an impeccable performance. For Lopez, he didn't. It was at times he didn't commit himself. He committed himself in the first, trying to go after Kambosos, but then in the 10th round he had him hurt. He didn't want to commit. So this was a case of the guy who wanted it more, and the guy with the better game plan and the better boxing won this fight. So congratulations to George Kambosos Jr. Big upset and a really, really impressive performance. Exceptional performance by him. So congrats to him. He can now go on to unify with Devin Haney or whatever he wants to do. He can have the rematch if he wants. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Let me know what you thought about the fight. What did you think about the performance by George Kambosos Jr.? And until next time, this is MKO Pugilism, over and out.